And what's good, ladies and gentlemen, Ackle here, of course, welcome back to each and every one of you. Happy, it's Baron's Chat, episode 13. Ladies and gentlemen, holy crap, we're already getting up there. Soon it will be 20. Who knew? Ladies and gentlemen, it is good to be back. Another Friday, another Baron's Chat. I have one final little bit that I'm going to drop on you guys that I think might actually be very interesting. Again, this is a theory that I'm working on. I'm not done with it just yet. But people have been mentioning this for a while now. And one specific person that's been talking about this a lot is here with us in chat tonight. And it's Ronan. Ronan, I see you. For those of you that think I don't read the comment section, I promise you I do. I love reading the comment section. It always makes me think about theories and stuff that I could do, and stuff that I could talk about. So, you guys remember this? The mural. Now, this mural is found in the War Within. It is currently in the War Within. If you look at the mural, you look at what the mural represents, you will see that there are these faceless ones standing in front of an old god. The old god seems to have a crystal just hovering above them. And this crystal is clearly shining something. Something is shining right from this crystal. You can see the lines as it runs off of the crystal. And this old god, at least from what I can see here, looks to be feeding almost on these faceless ones. Or the faceless ones is feeding him something. You look at the faceless ones there, you see bugs. Nerubians. You almost see unevolved Nerubians walking in front of him. If you look very closely there, I don't know if you guys can see it, where my mouse is now. Do you see those little bugs? It looks like faceless ones, and then these little bugs, what would become Nerubians, moving towards him, and it looks as if he's feasting on them, most likely changing them into, what is bigger. But who is he? So this is where we get to this picture. Now, I spoke about this picture last week. I spoke about this picture, I think, the week before. I did the due diligence of actually looking and finding this fucking picture. I couldn't find the original, but then again, I didn't look hard enough. I just found this, and I was like, fuck it, let's just go with this. This is not from me. I didn't make these markings. Someone else did it. But, I would have made the markings anyway, so there you go. We have on this picture, by the way, is from Chronicles Volume 3. In the Chronicles Volume 3, we have this picture. We have a picture of old gods. We have Yisaraj over here. We have Yogg-Saron down here. We have Cthulhu over here. And we have N'Zoth over here. And then the question, of course, is who is this? Because there is clearly one more old god here. Now, at the time, I remember when this picture first came to us in the Chronicles Volume 3. One of my immediate thoughts was Xal'atath. I thought it just makes sense that it would be Xal'atath. I have since then changed my mind on this. It looks to me as if Xal'atath was always meant to be the Harbinger. Xal'atath wasn't an old god. She was never an old god. Her job, her only function, has always been to open the way for the Void Lords. That is what she was designed to do. This means we have a problem. There is another old god that is, as of yet, unaccounted for. A fifth old god that is unaccounted for. If you look at this old god, look at the picture here, it looks very similar to this one. Very similar to this one. Now, at the time, I even mentioned that this crystal, to me, looks very similar to the crystal that we see sticking out of the roof. The only real difference is that this one is bound. This crystal is bound by the old gods. The other one looks to be a little bit more free. And also, it is entirely possible that this crystal is a depiction of the whole, but not in its original form. So what I mean by that is, when they made this mural, they decided to take artistic license, and they made the crystal its own, right? They showed the crystal as it would look in its splendor as part of the old god Ny'alotha, rather than what it is. If you think about the crystal that is currently stuck in the roof of Hallowfall, what does it do? What is its main job? It is where the light comes from, right? It's where the light in Hallowfall comes from. Hallowfall is clearly where this is. Well, it's not pink, it's purple, Kimmy. It's purple, signifying, in my opinion at least, the void element of it. And we know that the crystal is currently ticking from light to void, which suggests that at the time, the old gods, when the old gods reigned in this area, this crystal wasn't showing light. And it may actually have been the Arathi that purged the void from the crystal. Either the Arathi did it, or maybe the Titans did it with the help of the Earthen, but someone purged. After the destruction of the old gods, someone purged that crystal and turned it into a crystal of light rather than what it was here. Now, we already know that the Naru have a tendency to shift from light to void. We already know that beings of light have not been seen outside of the Naru, so we don't actually know what they would do, right? But if the Naru can shift from void to light, then maybe other light beings can shift from void to light as well. We just don't know. Now, how many of you immediately started asking the question, well then, Akalon, where is this old god? If indeed, if you bite and you believe that this is in fact the fifth old god, and this old god and this old god is in fact the same old god, then where is this old god? So remember my theory last week. Now, I've had some time to think about that theory. And here's what I'll say about it. I want you to imagine once again Azeroth. Imagine Azeroth as a 3D round object. Now, in your mind's eye, imagine Kalimdor, Eastern Kingdoms, Northrend, the Dragon Isles, Pandaria. And imagine that the lands of Eastern Kingdoms, Kalimdor, Northrend, and Pandaria, imagine it forms a circle, right? Now, if you zoom out from that circle just a little bit, you land in what I like to call the ordered center of Azeroth. A piece of Azeroth that was built to be preserved by the Titans, held away from the chaos that otherwise would be the creation or the life of Azeroth itself. How do I know this? Well, we look at the story. We look at the evidence. We can't prove anything, but we can look at evidence. And if we have enough evidence, we can maybe make some connections. Now, last week we spoke about this. If you were to stand on the shores of Eastern Kingdoms and you decided to travel east, you would hit a place called the Veiled Sea. If you stood on Kalimdor and you traveled west, you would hit a place called the Veiled Sea. If you stood on Northrend and traveled north, you would hit a place called the Veiled Sea. If you stood on Pandaria and traveled south, you would hit a place called the Veiled Sea. Everywhere you go, you would hit a place called the Veiled Sea. But then in Dragonflight, something miraculous occurred. The green dragons told us a story. A story of a very fast green dragon. Her name escapes me now. But let's call her Sarah. Sarah was very quick. And Sarah is a dragon's name, believe me. Trust me, bro. Sarah was very quick. In fact, Sarah was the quickest little dragon on the isle. Sarah, in fact, was so quick that Sarah kept flying further and further out. To the point where Sarah started to feel like she could take on the Sea of Storms. Now, I challenge you to find the Sea of Storms. From what I can tell and from what I can find, no one knows where the fuck this sea is. It is a sea that all of the dragons are very much aware of. They know exactly where it is and what it is. And they're all deathly afraid of it. Because anyone that tries to go through the storm of the Sea of Storms gets fucked by the Sea of Storms. So the Sea of Storms is dangerous. That's basically what we know. We have a rough idea, we have a rough idea of where she flew to. We know that she traveled west. Okay? And we have a decent idea that it was from Kalimdor. So that's a rough idea of where she traveled to. But that doesn't tell us where the Sea of Storms is. You remember, she just wanted to travel as far as she possibly could. Now, if the Sea of Storms was just a specific area, say off the coast west of Kalimdor, then she could have just gone east and she would have still been able to fly as far as the horizons would take her. She could have flown around the Sea of Storms. She didn't have to go through the Sea of Storms. So this gives us another bit of the clue. The Sea of Storms has to be large enough that it can't be sidestepped. You can't go around it. You can't avoid it. If you wish to leave the shores of Kalimdor, the land of eternal stars, you have to go through the Sea of Storms. To my mind, and maybe some of you may disagree with me, to my mind, this would suggest that the Sea of Storms envelops Azeroth. So if you see, again, close your eyes and just think of this. Right at the top, you have Northrend. The bottom, you have Pandaria. You have Kalimdor and you have Eastern Kingdoms. Outside of that, imagine all around it, you have the Sea of Storms. Now imagine at the core, on each of these lands, right in the middle, you have the Maelstrom that used to be the Well of Eternity. We now know that right below the Well of Eternity sits the World Pillar. The World Pillar, in conjunction with the engines of the Titans, the engines that are literally scattered all over the place. Every single continent has engines on it. Engines and chambers of the Titans. Imagine that all of these engines and all of these chambers have one job, and that is to keep the chaos at bay. It is to keep order in this small little area. So this means that everything outside of this area is chaotic, is natural. How do we know that that is probably what it is? Well, we go back to what little we know of life on Azeroth before the Titans arrived. It is said to have been a time of great turmoil and chaos. We had the elements fighting each other, fighting the old gods, fighting for the old gods. We had the old gods at war with one another. We had life teeming on Azeroth pretty much from the start. And it wasn't ordered, right? Nothing was ordered. Everything was just happening. The Titans arrive and they establish a new zone of control, if you will. Now, my posit is that this old god you see here was too powerful to be imprisoned. This old god lies outside the zone of control. The fifth and the greatest of the old gods. One that was left to his own devices because they couldn't get him. How do we know they couldn't get him? Because Odin says it. Odin writes about the earthen and the constructs, the brothers of the Watchers, who did not believe the Titans' lies and escaped to Avaloran. And every single expedition that they sent to Avaloran, they never returned. It never says that these Watchers that turned against the Titan Watchers that we know, Odin and Loken and Aenor, not Aenor, Life Bitch, what's her name? Oh, Aenor's daughter is kind of, what's her name? Doesn't really matter, but now I need to have the name in order to continue. Freya! Avi, thank you. Yes, Freya. Freya and those, it's never stated that those Watchers are the ones that killed the expeditions that were trying to bring them back. Just that they never returned. That, in fact, they eventually gave up. They realized that they're never getting these guys back. So, to my mind, this would also play perfectly into the one line from Azara. When Azara says, I go to claim the ultimate throne of power. And we all ask, what do you mean? What throne of power? Well, if indeed this old god is the most powerful of all of the old gods, and I would remind you all that even in this picture that Blizzard themselves chose, he is the highest of all of the others, right? He is the highest of them all. Perhaps suggesting in some weird way that he was the leader of all of them. Remember, the Titans tell us that Yesaraj was the largest of all of the old gods, but that comes from the Titans. It could be a lie, it could be the truth, we just don't know. But if it's true that this is in fact the most powerful of all of the Titans, then it would suggest that that is where Azara is going. When Azara says in Dragonflight, when the followers of Azara says that Azara has finally made it through the barrier, that is what the umbral veil, as they called it, that is what they're referring to. She's going to that dude because he has the ultimate power on Azeroth. We, of course, don't know what his name is. We've never even heard of him. The mural seems like one of the little stories from one of the time rifts where there were mortals sacrificed to the Ancient One. Could this dome of order be created, maintained by Ulduar, thereby giving reason to us going there in Last Titan to learn Titan secrets? Lexi, I would not put it past. I would not put it past the Titans that Ulduar. I think we can all agree that Ulduar is probably the greatest of all of the Titan facilities. It definitely seems to be over-designed for what it's supposed to do. If you compare it to all of the other Titan facilities, none of them are quite as intricately designed as Ulduar, right? So it is entirely possible that Ulduar is the main facility. It was the last facility that was maybe built, and it was the facility that was built to basically control all of the other facilities. We might actually learn something to that nature, but that's just sort of a wishful thinking because I always love Ulduar. I would always like to go back to Ulduar. There's one more thing in this that I will just sort of point out, and that is And I've never actually seen anyone talk about this, including myself at the time. We were so taken aback by the old gods that we never actually spoke about the banner. There is a banner that the old god Cthulhu is holding onto. And if you look at the banner, it has a hammer and what looks like a sun attached to it, and a banner that runs right down to the bottom here. You can see the handle of the banner. Now, this mountain that they're on is clearly the Ny'alotha, the old empire. You can see the spires of the old empire. But what is this banner? Yeah, I know that it looks very similar to the Twilight's Hammer banner, but at the time of the Black Empire, the Twilight's Hammer banner would not have been in existence, unless we're arguing that the banner is as old as the fucking Black Empire, which I don't think it is. From my reading of the lore, at least, the Twilight Hammer is new-ish to the lore, right? It's a new-ish establishment. It's not quite as old as the Black Empire. And this picture clearly comes from the days of the Black Empire. So I don't think that this banner... I think the Twilight's Hammer banner is a banner that was copied from something else. I don't think it's originally their banner. I think the banner comes from something else. And the reason I say that is the sun. The depictions of the sun. Now, I made a video, like, probably 3 or 4 years ago about the Twilight's Hammer and the fact that their banner has a sun, or what looks like a sun on it. And at the time, this is what I said. If the Naru can go from light to void, it suggests that the relationship between the light and the void is far closer than what the game lets on. The game wants to tell us that the light and the void are completely opposing sides of one another, and that they have nothing to do with each other except for the fact that they're enemies of each other. But this banner that clearly dates back to the days of the Black Empire included then the fact that Naru can naturally switch from light to void. Well, not naturally, but they can be made to turn into void Naru. Suggests that relationship, the lines between those two, might actually be far more blurred than what we've been told. They may, in fact, not be complete opposites of one another. It could be a one coin, two sides kind of thing. It could be even more closely related. I'm not entirely sure. I'm just throwing this out there because why not? In 4 years, I've not had an answer to this particular problem. And I don't know if I'm going to have an answer anytime soon. But I thought I'd throw it out there because it's worth thinking about. It's worth thinking about. Even if you just believe this is the Twilight's Hammer and Blizzard just did it for art's sake. Okay, great. I'm willing to concede on that. I don't care. Because fundamentally, I don't know if the lore supports that, but it might. There might be something that I'm missing. But it's still, to me, is interesting that the sun, it's clearly a depiction in part of the sun. Right? And that, to me, I think is worth exploring a little bit more. But, you know, it is what it is. It does actually, doesn't it, Sparkaside? I've been looking at this also for a while. It does look a little bit like a sword connecting the hammer to Cthulhu. Now, there is a possibility that all this is meant to show is the future, right? So the thousands of possibilities of the future for the old god. So it is actually a sword because they knew that the sword was going to be stuck into the planet. But I don't know, right? I can't really know. what did Xal'atath say about the Naru? She said a few things, but the one thing that everyone sort of always points to, myself included, is the Naru. The Naru views us as monsters that ought to be resisted, but we do not share that view. To us, they are simply brothers and sisters who have lost their way, and they will return to the masters in time. That's what Xal'atath said about the Naru. I believe, yes, but remember, just because it's 1-to-1, the point I'm making is, if you for a second start saying, what if the Twilight Hammer didn't design their own banner, but instead borrowed their banner from something else as a way of showing their devotion to their masters, then the answer, this banner is the banner of the Twilight Hammer, doesn't matter. That's not an answer to what is this banner. Because the banner did not belong to the Twilight Hammer first. It may have belonged to something before that. Because as I said, this picture appears to be from a time before mortals even. This would mean that at least at the time, it would probably not have included the Twilight Hammer, because the Twilight Hammer doesn't seem to be that old. Now, it could be. Could be that the old gods always called their followers, or at least some of their followers, the Twilight Hammer clan. But I doubt it. So clearly there is something that we need to ask here. We don't know. I don't know. I just bring it up because I think it's interesting. I think it's interesting to think about, at least.